At the hunting grounds, Lugji's arrow went astray and startled my horse. I fell hard from the saddle, yet he only rushed toward Xue Rong, who was not far away. "Are you hurt?" Then he turned and scolded me. "Why did you insist on riding alongside her? You are a general's daughter with excellent horsemanship, but she is just a scholar official's daughter, too weak to even tie up a chicken. Apologize to her at once." I didn't think I'd done anything wrong, so I simply broke off the engagement and got betrothed to the Chu family instead. On the day of my wedding, Lugji rode through the streets and blocked my bridal sedan, shoving a bow and arrow into my hands. "Use this to shoot my horse, to repay the pain you suffered that day. I only beg you, don't marry someone else." At the hunting grounds, the autumn wind swept up bits of grass, making the banners snap and flutter. Xue Rong rode her horse, following leisurely at my side, her horse's head nearly level with mine. Today she wore a peach-pink riding outfit that made her look even more like a lovely lotus blossom, pitiable at first sight. "Sister Yuan," she spoke softly, her voice quiet, yet just loud enough for both me and Lugji nearby to hear clearly. "Your horsemanship is so good, truly worthy of a general's daughter. Unlike me, I can't even draw a bow. How useless I am." These words sounded like self-deprecation, but were actually like needles, jabbing, right where it made people most uncomfortable. She knew full well that Lugji's mother disliked me the most for wielding swords and spears, thinking I lacked any of the gentleness of a noble lady. Yet she deliberately brought it up at this moment. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her, and only said lightly, "Sister Xue is too modest. Your poetry is so excellent, which talented lady in the capital could match you?" She covered her lips with a smile, about to say something more. Suddenly, a feathered arrow came piercing through the air, carrying a sharp whistle, grazing past my horse's head and embedding itself into the grass ahead. The arrow was too close, and my mount was startled, rearing up violently on its hind legs with a long neigh, caught off guard. I only managed to grip the reins before I was thrown off by a tremendous force. As the world spun around me, I crashed heavily onto the ground. Piercing pain shot through my left arm, accompanied by a clear sound of bone cracking, like a dead branch being snapped underfoot in winter. The pain made my vision go black, and cold sweat instantly broke out. Yet the one who caused all this, my fiancé Lugji, didn't even spare me a glance. He dismounted and rushed straight toward Xue Rong beside us. "Ronger, how are you? Are you hurt?" His voice was filled with anxiety as he carefully supported Xue Rong, checking her up and down. Xue Rong's horse hadn't been startled. She was just a bit shaken. At this moment, her face was pale, tears welling up in her eyes, shaking her head as she leaned against Lugji's embrace. Still in shock, what a beautiful scene of a hero saving a beauty. If it weren't for the fact that he was the one who shot that arrow, if it weren't for the fact that I was the one thrown off the horse, I might have applauded too. After comforting Xue Rong, Lugji finally turned his gaze toward me, brows tightly furrowed, his face showing undisguised anger. "Jianuan, have you had enough of this nonsense?" He strode up to me, looking down at me from above, as if scrutinizing a criminal. "Why did you insist on riding alongside her? You are a daughter of a military family, with excellent horsemanship. You couldn't even handle this little situation. But she is just the daughter of a civil official, weak and powerless. If she got hurt today, could you bear the responsibility? Hurry up and apologize to Ronger." Every word was like a knife tempered in ice. Me, personal maid Chunner, rushed over, wanting to help me up, but afraid of touching my wounds, sweating profusely from anxiety. Hearing Lugji's words, she trembled with anger and raised her head to confront him. "General Lu, didn't you see? The one who is injured is our young miss. Your arrow spooked the young miss's horse. How can you blame her?" Lugji's brows were tightly furrowed, his face full of impatience. If she hadn't deliberately provoked her, insisting on racing horses with Ronger, how would this have happened? Ronger's horsemanship isn't skilled. Didn't she know that? As a daughter of a military family, She doesn't even have this much tolerance for others." He was convinced that I had deliberately provoked her, which caused Xue Rong to be startled. That arrow that went astray, in his eyes, was nothing more than a trivial little mistake, while I was the real culprit behind this accident. The pain in my left arm surged wave after wave, like the tide, almost drowning my sanity. But I didn't cry, nor did I scream. I just propped myself up on the ground with my uninjured right hand, slowly, bit by bit, raising my head to meet his gaze. He tugged at the corner of my mouth, wanting to smile, but only pulled at the wound on my face. "Lugji, are you blind?" My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, carrying a trace of hoarse coldness. "Where your arrow flew, your eyes couldn't see. Whose horse got spooked? Who fell off? You can't tell. Or is it that in your heart, as long as it is about Xue Rong, it is always someone else's fault?" I looked at him, mocking word by word, as expected of the great general guarding the frontier, truly observant of the finest details, judging cases like a god. "It is just that your eyesight isn't so great. I suggest finding a doctor to take a look. Don't mix up targets and people." Lugji's face instantly turned ugly, alternating between green and white, as if he'd been slapped in public. "Good, what a sharp-tongued Jianuan you are," he said through gritted teeth. "Since you refuse to repent, then walk back to the capital yourself." After saying that, he no longer looked at me, turned around and lifted Xue Rong horizontally into his arms, steadily placing her on his own horse's back. He led his horse and walked away without looking back. The sound of hooves faded into the distance at the edge of the vast hunting ground. Only Chun'er and I remained. The autumn wind blew against us, carrying a bleak chill. Chun'er looked at my paper-white face and my unnaturally drooping left arm, and finally couldn't hold back her tears. "Miss, what are we going to do?" She spoke with a sobbing voice. "We came here in General Lu's carriage. This place is dozens of li from the capital, with no village ahead and no inn behind. Your arm, we need to find a doctor right away. If we delay any longer, I am afraid it'll be crippled." Her words made my heart sink. "My father is the Grand General of the realm. My mother passed away early, and he raised me like a son, teaching me horseback riding and archery since I was little. These hands once drew the hardest bow in the army, if they're crippled." I closed my eyes as a wave of helplessness washed over me. Just as Qingyu and I were sinking into despair, the steady sound of carriage wheels approached from afar. A carriage with blue curtains stopped beside us. A servant boy in blue cotton clothes jumped down from the carriage, walked quickly to us, and bowed respectfully. "Are you Miss Zhang from the Grand General's manor?" I looked at him without saying a word. He seemed to notice my injuries and predicament, and directly stated his purpose. "My young master is at the manor up ahead. He noticed there seemed to be an accident over here just now, and specially sent me to check. If the young lady doesn't mind, why not get on our carriage first and rest at the manor for a while? There is a resident doctor at the manor who can treat your injuries first." I asked. "Your young master is?" The servant replied, "My young master's surname is Chu." The Chu family? A face vaguely flashed through my mind. That face was ridiculously beautiful, yet always carried a sickly pallor. The pain in my arm became increasingly clear, like countless needles pricking me. Looking at the servant's sincere eyes, I had no more strength left to ponder the deeper meaning behind this coincidence. "Thank you," I said to him hoarsely, sorry for the trouble. The Chu family's manor wasn't large, but it was kept in perfect order with a sense of tranquility everywhere. As soon as the carriage came to a stop, servant women came forward and carefully helped me into a guest room that had already been prepared. The room was filled with a faint scent of medicinal herbs, and a doctor carrying a medicine box was already waiting there. His movements were swift as he examined my injury, his brows furrowed tightly, muttering under his breath. "The bone is dislocated. It needs to be set back. Bear with it, miss." I clenched my teeth and heard a click, along with a numbing ache that made my scalp tingle. The dislocated bone was set back in place. The doctor didn't stop. using a splint to secure my left arm. She then gave many detailed instructions about things to avoid while recovering, nothing more than not moving around carelessly, keeping a light diet, and the like. After seeing the doctor off, the young servant in blue who had led the way earlier came back in, bowing and said, "Miss Jiang, we've already sent someone riding fast to deliver a message to the general's residence. General Jiang will surely know soon. Please rest assured and focus on recovering here. If you need anything, just let us know." After speaking, he led the maids out of the room, leaving the space to me and Chun'er. The moment the door closed, Chun'er's tightly wound nerves finally snapped. Her eyes were rimmed with red, her voice suppressing rage, and she could no longer hold back from cursing bitterly. That Lugji, he is simply not human, lying through his teeth, twisting black and white, miss. You treated him so well, yet all he has in his heart is that fox spirit with the surname Xue. He abandoned you alone at the hunting grounds. If the Chu family's people had arrived even a moment later, your arm. The more she spoke, the angrier she got, stamping her feet on the spot in fury, as if that was the only way to vent the hatred in her heart. I leaned against the soft pillow, my left arm suspended in front of my chest, listening to Chun'er's cursing. That wasteland in my heart that had been swept by cold winds actually calmed down instead. "Don't worry," I spoke, my voice somewhat hoarse. "My father won't let him off." Sure enough, the afternoon of the second day, the people my father sent arrived. Not only did he send large and small boxes of fresh clothes, medicine, and tonics, but also a letter written by his own hand. I had Chun'er unfold the letter. The first half of the letter, between every line, was filled with a father's affection and concern for his daughter. He asked meticulously about my injuries, whether it hurt, whether the servants at the estate were attentive enough. He told me not to worry about anything and just focus on recovering. That familiar, slightly messy handwriting seemed to carry his usual gruff voice. But when I got to the second half, the tone changed completely. Father used the vocabulary he most often employed when cursing his subordinate ruffians, and cursed Lugji from head to toe until he was drenched in abuse. He said when he received the news he was in the middle of a meeting, and he flipped the table on the spot, grabbed his horsewhip, and charged straight to the Lu residence. Regardless of how the Lu parents tried to stop him, he barged in and dragged Lugji out, giving him a thorough whipping. The letter wrote, "This old man smashed the pair of jade ruyi your mother left behind right on their doorstep, and tore up the marriage contract too. My Zhang family's daughter, even if she never marries her whole life, will absolutely not suffer the abuse of such scum worse than pigs and dogs." At the end of the letter, Father's anger still hadn't subsided, and he added another line. He said he had already written a memorial overnight to impeach Lugji, accusing him of lax military discipline, poor moral conduct, riding recklessly, and committing violence at the imperial hunting grounds with complete disregard for human life. Now, the whole capital knows that he, General Lu, nearly crippled his own fiancé's arm for the sake of a civil official's daughter. After reading the letter, my heart felt like drinking a bowl of iced sour plum soup on the hottest summer day. That suffocating resentment finally dissipated by more than half. Chun'er watched from the side, her face beaming with joy, clapping her hands in delight. The general is mighty. That is how it should be. Let that pair of cheating scum be utterly ruined. I told her to put the letter away, but my mind uncontrollably started to recall the past. Actually, I've always found Xue Rong irritating. She always liked to look at me with seemingly innocent eyes, yet every word she said was laced with barbs. I mentioned it to Lugji a few times, but he never took it seriously. He would furrow his brow and say to me in a helpless yet tolerant tone, "Yuan, the Xue family and mine are old family friends. My father and Uncle Xue were close friends from the same imperial examination year. Ronger lost her mother when she was young, and Uncle Xue was busy with official duties. So my mother often brought her to our manor to look after her. I only treat her as my own little sister. Don't listen to those people outside talking nonsense. What I feel for her is really just sibling affection." He even held my hand and earnestly promised me with sincere eyes, "Rest assured, no matter what, I, Lugji, in this life and forever, will only have you, Jiangyuan, as my wife. Thinking about it now, everything he said was complete bullshit. What sibling affection? What looking after her more? It was all just a high-sounding excuse for his own selfish desires. His eyes weren't blind. The adoration overflowing from Xue Rong's gaze whenever she looked at him, how could he not feel it? He was simply enjoying it all. Enjoying the bright future my family background could bring him, while also enjoying how Xue Rong's fragility could satisfy his pathetic need to protect. The more I thought about it, the more the anger surged up inside me. That suppressed rage mixed with grievance, like a pot of boiling water, bubbled and gurgled in my chest. I raised my uninjured right hand and punched the hard wooden bed frame beneath me fiercely. A muffled thud sounded. Miss. Chunner was startled by me and quickly pressed down on my shoulders. Please don't move recklessly. Be careful of pulling your wounds. The doctor said you need to rest quietly. Seeing my expression wasn't right, she softened her voice to persuade me. It is not worth getting angry over someone like that. Now that we've broken off the engagement, he'll never be an eyesore to you again. Taking care of your injuries is what matters. I took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, not worth it. Over the next few days, I recuperated peacefully at the Chu family's estate, living more comfortably than at my own home. Chunner took meticulous care of me, and the Chu family servants were all gentle and well-behaved. The meals, soup, and medicine delivered daily were always just right, never with unnecessary words, and never prying into anything. This perfectly measured sense of distance made me feel very comfortable. It is just that I've been staying here for nearly 5 days, yet I've never seen that young master of the Chu family. I felt somewhat curious. After all, he was the one who helped me, and I haven't even thanked him in person yet. This day, the young servant in blue from before came to deliver things again. So I asked him, "Young man, thank you all for taking care of me these past few days. May I ask where your young master is now? I'd like to thank him in person." Upon hearing this, the servant's expression became somewhat subtle. His gaze unconsciously glanced toward the corner behind me. There was nothing there, only a carved wooden window with a few stalks of green bamboo outside. He quickly withdrew his gaze, lowered his head, and answered respectfully. In reply to Miss Zhang, my young master, he has always disliked meeting strangers, fearing it would disturb your recovery. Your gratitude, this humble one, will surely convey it. Dislikes meeting strangers? I didn't think much of it after hearing this. After all, among noble family children, some having peculiar temperaments is quite normal. No matter, I smiled. Since that is the case, please convey my gratitude on my behalf. Once my injuries have healed, I will certainly prepare generous gifts and pay a visit in person. I thought the matter would just pass like this. Unexpectedly, the next day, that servant came again, looking even more uneasy than yesterday. He stood at the doorway, hesitating for a long while before finally explaining. Miss Zhang, yesterday this humble one misspoke. My young master, he doesn't dislike meeting strangers. He paused for a moment as if weighing his words, and after holding back for a long time, finally managed to say, my young master just doesn't like meeting anyone other than you. The way he said it was somewhat incoherent. The servant's face had turned completely red. Seeing my confused expression, he simply gave up and blurted out in one breath. Anyway, Miss Zhang, please don't misunderstand. My young master isn't a bad person at heart, really. Listening to his jumbled explanation, a fleeting glimpse from outside the city suddenly flashed through my mind. That face too beautiful to be real, and those clear yet stubborn eyes. I couldn't help but burst out laughing with a PFFT. Chunner, however, was completely confused. She leaned close to me, lowered her voice, and muttered with a puzzled look, "Miss, why is this young Master Chu so strange?" Father came to see me once. Seeing that I was in good spirits and my wound was healing well, he finally felt relieved. He blew his beard and glared while scolding Lugji for a long time, then tried to pry information about the Chu family through indirect questions until I impatiently shooed him away. During this time, young Master Q would occasionally have that servant in green deliver things over. Sometimes it was a box of freshly made osmanthus cakes, still steaming hot, sweet, but not cloying. Sometimes it was a pot of orchids in full bloom of exceptional quality. Other times it was a rare travelogue, its pages yellowed, carrying the fragrance of ink. None of these things were particularly precious, yet each one happened to touch my heart. Every time Chunner accepted these gifts, she couldn't help but whisper in my ear, "Miss, this young Master Chu is really thoughtful." I said nothing, but my heart felt like it was soaking in warm water, and that chill caused by Lugji had long since dissipated completely. Half a month later, my arm had mostly healed and the splint was removed. Although I still couldn't do strenuous activities, daily life was no longer a problem. I decided to return to the manor. After all, staying at someone else's home all the time wasn't proper. Before leaving, I took out a long brocade box from my personal belongings and handed it to the young servant in blue. "Please deliver this to young Master Chu." The servant took it, somewhat curious. Chunner stood beside me, and when she saw the style of the brocade box, her expression changed. She seized the moment when the servant went to prepare the carriage and horses, grabbed my arm, her voice tight. "Miss, how could you give that away?" I raised an eyebrow at her. That was something Madam left for you. It was the token of love the old general gave to Madam back then. Chunner was so anxious she was nearly in tears. "What do you mean by giving it to young Master Chu?" Inside the brocade box was a dagger named Wan Yue, sharp enough to cut through iron like mud, a keepsake from my mother. Back then, my father narrowly survived countless battles, and with his military achievements he obtained Western region's cold iron and had a master craftsman forge this dagger as a gift for my mother. Me father once said this dagger represented him even when he wasn't by my mother's side. It could keep her safe. I looked at Chunner's anxious face and just smiled. Literally what I said. On the third day after I returned to the general's manor, Lugji and his mother got the news and came to visit with generous gifts. I sat in the seat of honor, leisurely sipping tea, not even bothering to lift my eyelids. Madame Lu had a stiff smile plastered on her face and started with a round of self-blame. "Yuan girl, this is all our Guizhi's fault. He was a bastard, acting impulsively and hurting you. We came today specifically to apologize to you." As she spoke, she nudged Lugji beside her. Lugji's expression wasn't pleasant, probably because the whipping my father gave him hadn't fully healed yet, or maybe because he felt apologizing to me was beneath him. He dawdled for a long while before squeezing out through gritted teeth. "I was wrong before." I set down my teacup with a soft clink. "That is it?" I looked up at the mother and son with a half smile. I was wrong, and that is the end of it." Madame Lu hurried to smooth things over. "Of course not. Look, we've prepared so many fine medicines and tonics." She paused, finally getting to the main point. "Little Yuan, the marriage between you and Guizhi, our two families settled it long ago, children throwing tantrums. How can that be taken seriously? I think once your injuries are completely healed, we should set a new wedding date. What do you say?" After hearing this, it was like I'd heard the biggest joke ever, and I couldn't help but let out a gasp of amazement. "Madame Lu, today I've really had my eyes opened." I clapped my hands, genuinely impressed. "Is your family's thick skin made from bricks at the corner of a city wall? It is really thick enough." The smile on Madame Lu's face completely fell apart. Lugji straight up exploded. He pointed at me and raged. "Zhang Yuan, my mother is speaking to you nicely. Don't be so ungrateful. We've already come to apologize. What more do you want? You won't stop until everyone knows about this. How can you be so narrow-minded? Petty?" I laughed in anger, stood up, and walked toward him step by step. "Lugji, get this straight. You are the one who spooked my horse. You are the one who shot the arrow off course. You are the one who left me alone in the wilderness. And you are the one who defended another woman without knowing right from wrong, from start to finish. You are the one who did wrong, and now you have the nerve to turn around and blame me." I stared into his eyes and asked, word by word, "Who gave you the guts?" "Marry whoever you want. Even if you carry Xue Rong through the door in a grand bridal sedan tomorrow, it has got nothing to do with me. But stop showing up in front of me and being an eyesore, dirtying my floor." I couldn't be bothered to waste more words on them, so I raised my voice and called out, "Simone, see the guests out." The household servants had already received my father's orders. They swarmed forward and escorted the mother and son out without a shred of courtesy. Lugji was shoved by the servants, his face flushed red with anger. He stood at the doorway, turned back, and threw out harsh words. "Jiangyuan, don't regret this. I, Lugji, don't absolutely need you." I leaned against the doorframe, waved at him, smiling brightly. "Thank you. That really couldn't be better." Lugji was nearly choked to death by my words and stormed off with a flick of his sleeve, perhaps to prove his words that he didn't absolutely need me. From that day on, Lugji started making a big show of seeking marriage matches throughout the capital. His mother frequently visited various noble residences and attended all sorts of banquets, making it clear she wanted to find him a better match. The laughable thing was all thunder and no rain. His little scandal with Xue Rong at the hunting grounds had already spread throughout the capital. What family that cherished their daughter would be willing to marry her off to a man who could abandon his own fiancé for another woman? Even the few families that were tempted had their plans ruined by Xue Rong. I heard from Chunner that Xue Rong, who knows what tricks she used, but whenever the Lu family took a liking to some young lady, she would always show up at just the right moment, crying and putting on a show of brother Guizhi and I are innocent. Please don't misunderstand, sister. After such a scene, who would still dare to get involved? Madame Lu finally realized that this Xue Rong, whom she had doted on like her own daughter, was nothing but a homewrecker. She was so angry she fell ill. After recovering, the first thing she did was politely invite Xue Rong back to the Xue family and cut off all contact. Xue Rong became a complete laughingstock in the capital. Listening to these rumors, I felt so pleased that I ate an extra bowl of rice at dinner. A few days later, I went out to browse a newly opened jewelry shop. When the carriage reached the narrowest section of Juke Street, it came to a stop. I lifted the curtain and saw two carriages up ahead, locked in a standoff, neither willing to yield to the other. One of them, I recognized it bore the Lu family's insignia. The other had a dark canopy and ebony frame, understated in style, looking somewhat familiar. While they were at this impasse, the curtain of the Lu family's carriage was lifted, and Xue Rong leaned halfway out. She was dressed in plain white, her face carrying a hint of grievance, and spoke softly toward the dark canopied carriage. "Good sir, might you do us a favor and let us pass? My mother is gravely ill, and I am rushing to see her. I really cannot afford any delay." Her pitiful appearance like this had always worked wonders on men. Too bad she ran into the wrong person today. There was no movement from inside that green-curtained carriage, but the green-clad servant driving it let out a cold laugh and replied without any courtesy, "How much is your family's reputation worth? Why should our young master yield, not yielding?" That voice. I recognized it. It was that servant from the Chu family. Xue Rong's face instantly turned the color of pig liver, probably never expecting to be publicly rejected by a mere servant. Her eyes reddened, tears welling up in them as she looked toward the carriage as if seeking help. Lugji's face was also as black as the bottom of a pot. Finding this amusing, I simply had my coachman drive our carriage forward. I stopped beside Lugji's carriage and called out, "General Lu, what a coincidence." When Lugji saw me, his expression became even uglier, ignored him, and only gave orders to my coachman. "Go push General Lu's horse back a bit and make way for the Chu family's carriage." My coachman was originally one of my father's personal soldiers, tall and sturdy. Without a word, he jumped off the carriage and grabbed the Lu family's horse by the head, pulling it backward. Lugji's coachman didn't dare resist and could only watch helplessly as his carriage was forced to retreat to the side. Lugji finally couldn't hold back anymore. He stepped out of the carriage and stood by the road, questioning me. "Jiangyuan, what do you mean by this? Why are you helping Chu Gianuan? Chu Gianuan. Me heart stirred, so that was his name. I looked at him as if looking at a stranger. What a strange question, General Lu. Our engagement has already been broken off, and you still have your dear little sister in your carriage. What business is it of yours who I help? I curled my lips in mockery. Besides, first come, first served. Don't you understand? The Chu family's carriage reached the intersection first, so they should go first. You, the great General Lu, are so imposing on the battlefield. Yet here on the street, you can't even follow such basic rules. After saying that, I ignored his livid face and signaled my coachman to follow the Chu family's carriage, which had already started moving. The two carriages traveled one after another for a stretch. The Chu family's servant slowed down and drew alongside my carriage. He bowed to me with genuine sincerity. Thank you, Miss Zhang, for getting us out of that situation. I waved my hand dismissively, but my gaze fell on the carriage ahead. The curtain hung tightly closed, revealing nothing inside. I suddenly spoke up, my voice not loud, but enough for the person ahead to hear clearly. No need to be polite. I looked at that tightly shut carriage window and said slowly, Come to think of it, I've done young Master Q a favor this time. Since that is the case, might I ask young Master Q to step out of the carriage for a chat as a way of returning the favor? After a long moment, a slender, elegant finger lifted the carriage curtain. Then Chu Gianuan stepped down from the carriage. Today he wore a moon-white robe, draped with a light gray cloak on the outside, which made him look even more slender, as if he could be knocked over by a gust of wind. His features were exquisitely shaped, the kind of refined beauty that seemed to have dissolved the misty rain of Jiangnan, though his complexion carried a pallor from years without sunlight. Perhaps because everyone around was watching him, a faint blush rose on his face, and even the tips of his ears felt warm. He stepped off the carriage but didn't dare look at me directly, his gaze falling on my carriage wheels. His voice was gentle, like a stream melting in early spring. Miss Zhang, thank you for helping me out of that situation just now. I leaned leisurely against the carriage wall, watching his demeanor, and that mischievous thought bubbled up in my mind. Why doesn't young Master Chu dare to look at me? I teased. Back at the estate, weren't you watching quite openly? His body visibly stiffened, and he raised his head, eyes full of shock. You knew. I am a martial artist. My senses are sharper than most. I crossed my arms and said slowly, Did you think hiding behind the window or deep in the bamboo grove I wouldn't notice? Come to think of it, young Master Chu has watched me far more times than I've watched you. He became completely flustered, the blush spreading from his cheeks to the tips of his ears, like the finest rouge. Those beautiful eyes blinked in panic, lips quivering, yet unable to utter a single word, awkward and shy. Chuner behind me whispered her reproach. Miss, look at you. See what you've done to young Master Chu. Anyone who didn't know better would think you are some bully from who knows where harassing a decent young man. I ignored Chuner's muttering and just said to Chu Gianuan, Perfect timing. I am heading back to the manor. And so are you. Same way, walk together. He froze for a moment. Then obvious joy spread through his eyes, and he nodded vigorously. From Juke Street to the General's manor. You have to cross half the capital, Chu Gianuan, and I walked side by side in front, with two carriages following unhurriedly behind. At first he was still very stiff, walking with his body tense, unable to say a word for the longest time. So I took the initiative to make conversation from the newly opened pastry shop in the capital to the travel journals I'd been reading recently, then to the orchid he'd given me. He gradually relaxed and became more talkative. I found that he was actually quite chatty, just not good at starting conversations. He knew many strange tales I didn't know about, and when he talked about the customs and cultures of different places, his eyes sparkled, and that frail, sickly air about him faded quite a bit. We chatted all the way, and didn't even notice how long the road was. When we reached the entrance of the General's manor, I stopped. He stopped with me, the light in his eyes dimming again, seeming to want to say something but hesitating. Looking at him like this, my heart suddenly softened a little. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us, tilted my head up to look at him, and asked with a smile, "The weather will be nice tomorrow. The pleasure boats on Xuanwu Lake should all be out. Young Master Chu, would you be interested in touring the lake with me?" Chu Gianuan's eyes instantly lit up, like stars ignited in the night sky. He responded almost eagerly, "Yes, I am interested." After saying that, afraid he seemed too eager, he hurriedly added, the tips of his ears turning red again, I'll definitely be there on time tomorrow. I absolutely won't be late." After that, I often went out together with Chu Gianuan. We toured the lake together, went to temples outside the city to listen to Zen teachings together, and went to the liveliest night market in the capital together. He took me to find a wonton stall hidden in a deep alley that had been open for decades. I dragged him to a horse ranch in the suburbs and taught him how to grip the reins. Our relationship grew close at a rapid pace, with a tacit understanding between us. This matter naturally reached Lugji's ears as well. He got wind of it from somewhere, and actually blocked my way back to the manor one evening. That day I was just about to go out to meet Chu Gianuan when he directly blocked the manor gate, his face full of betrayed anger, and questioned me. "Jiangyuan, have you truly no shame? How long has it been since we broke off our engagement, and you are already hooking up with that sickly Chu Gianuan?" I looked at him like I was watching a jumping clown. "Lugji," I said coldly. "Who I am with is none of your business. Our engagement has been annulled. We'll each marry whoever we please and have nothing to do with each other anymore. What right do you have to question me now?" I couldn't be bothered to waste more words on him. I walked right past him, got onto the carriage, and left that twisted face of his completely behind. I felt the time was about right. That evening at dinner, I joined my father for a few drinks. He was in a good mood today, drinking until his face was flushed. I filled his cup with wine and spoke as if casually, "Father, pick an auspicious day and go to the Chu family to propose marriage for me." BFFT, my father sprayed out a mouthful of wine, splashing and soaking the front of his clothes. He didn't bother to wipe it off, staring at me with eyes wide open, as if seeing his daughter for the first time. "What did you say, propose marriage? To whom?" "The Chu family, Chu Gianuan." "When did this happen?" He slapped the table, his beard practically bristling. "You two, how far have you two gone?" I thought back to last night when I escorted Chu Gianuan back to his residence. In the secluded alley behind the Chu residence's back gate, he blushed and wanted to hold my hand, but didn't dare. Watching him made my heart soften, and I found it a little funny, too. I simply pulled him over, held him firmly in my arms, and gave him a solid kiss. He froze completely at that moment, like a block of wood, letting me do as I pleased. When I released him, his face was already flushed red, with a watery gleam at the corners of his eyes. Thinking of how pitiful yet adorable he looked, I felt a bit embarrassed, cleared my throat twice, and mumbled, "It is about time, I suppose." Seeing my expression, how could my father not understand? He pointed at me, unable to speak for a long while, and finally cursed in anger. "Outrageous! You outrageous brat! You've completely disgraced our Zhang family." His words were harsh, but he had already stood up, muttering, "A grown daughter can't be kept at home," while turning to walk toward the storeroom. "I'll go see what decent things we have that can be used as betrothal gifts. We can't let the Chu family look down on us." Looking at his retreating figure that said one thing but meant another, I couldn't help but smile until my eyes curved. But no one expected that the next day, before my father could finish taking stock of the gifts in the storeroom, the Chu family came to our door first. It wasn't just Chu Gianuan's parents who came, but Chu Gianuan himself as well. He stood in the center of the main hall, dressed in a very formal vermilion brocade robe, which made his complexion look much better. He looked at me, his gaze no longer evasive, with a determination I had never seen in him before. In front of both families' parents, he said to me, "A yuan every time before, it was you who walked toward me. This time, I want to take a step toward you." I looked at him, at the light in his eyes. I only felt something in my chest being struck heavily, leaving it sour and soft. The marriage between the two families was settled, just like that. The speed left the entire capital city dumbfounded. The Chu family provided generous betrothal gifts, a 10 li red dowry procession, carried into the general's manor like flowing water, giving me plenty of face. My father reciprocated in kind, placing my mother's most treasured South Sea pearl headpiece set into my dowry. On the day of the wedding, the sky was clear and bright. I wore the elaborate wedding dress, with a phoenix coronet on my head, sitting in the swaying bridal sedan, listening to the festive music playing outside. My heart felt an unprecedented peace. The wedding procession traveled all the way to Juke Street, then abruptly stopped. The noisy festive music outside came to a sudden halt, replaced by gasps and commotion from the crowd. My heart sank, and I was about to ask what happened. A familiar yet grating voice pierced through the sedan curtain, stabbing straight into my ears. Jiang. It was Lugji. He was on horseback, blocking the bridal sedan, his voice carrying a madness and despair I had never heard before. Get down here. Take this bow and shoot my horse, to repay the pain I caused you that day. I am begging you, don't marry someone else. The clamor outside the sedan curtain was like a pot of boiling porridge, noisy and chaotic. I didn't lift the curtain, only let my voice turn 3 degrees colder as I gave orders to those outside. The timing is crucial. Don't let irrelevant people delay the auspicious hour. But Lugji's voice stubbornly came through again, heavy with the smell of alcohol and an almost manic obsession. A yuan, I beg you forgive me. I furrowed my brows. Today was my wedding day. I didn't want him to ruin it. Lifting a small part of the curtain, I saw him wearing a dark robe completely out of place with this festive occasion. His hair crown askew, reeking of alcohol, where was even half the dashing bearing of the great general he once was. Today's farce was nothing more than his drunken loss of composure, venting that bit of unwillingness and regret. He had no time to play along with his belated deep affection act. He gave orders to the matchmaker and servants outside. Hold him down. Don't let him go crazy again. Also, send someone to tell my father that General Liu blocked my wedding sedan in the street, causing a disturbance. Have him impeach him at tomorrow's morning court. My voice wasn't loud, but it was enough for everyone around to hear clearly. The servants received their orders and swarmed forward. No matter how good Lugji's martial arts were, he couldn't withstand being drunk. He was quickly pinned to the ground by several strong servants, his mouth still slurring my name. I didn't spare him another glance. Lift the sedan, keep moving. The festive music started up again, and the bridal sedan bypassed that embarrassing scene, steadily making its way toward the Chu residence. The ceremony and toasts that followed all went smoothly. It wasn't until I was escorted into the bridal chamber, with red candles flickering throughout the room, that the light cast upon Chu Gianuan's already handsome face, adding an even more captivating glow. He sat at the edge of the bed, somewhat at a loss, not even knowing where to look. Watching how nervous he was, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I took the initiative to remove the heavy phoenix crown from my head and casually placed it on the table. Why is your face so red? I leaned closer, teasing him on purpose. Drunk before even having any wine. My gaze only made him more flustered. Even the tips of his ears were burning. His eyes fell to the hem of his clothes as he quietly defended himself. No. Looking at him, a curious thought suddenly popped into my mind. Chu Gianuan, when did you start liking me? He suddenly raised his head, seemingly not expecting me to ask so directly. Under the candlelight, his eyes were strikingly bright, that hint of shyness replaced by deeper affection. He pressed his lips together, the blush on his cheeks deepening. His voice was gentle, as if recounting a secret he had treasured for a long time. Do you remember last winter? I went to Puchuo Temple outside the city to pray for my mother's blessings. On the way back, the carriage broke down, and I ran into bandits. He spoke slowly, as if recalling a painting. The guards around me were all wounded. I thought I was done for. That is when you rode by on horseback. You were wearing a fiery red riding outfit like a flame burning in the snow. Without a word, you drew your blade and chased off those bandits in just a few moves. He paused. his gaze turning soft. "You tied them up, left them by the roadside, then asked if I was hurt, and even shared some rations and water with us? You sat on your horse, backlit, your silhouette like someone from a painting. Right then I thought, how could there be such a beautiful girl in this world?" After he finished, he lowered his head shyly again, as if afraid I'd think he was being calculating listening to him. The smile at the corner of my lips grew deeper. So it was that time. I remembered it was snowing heavily that day. I had just returned from the Sishan barracks and was taking a shortcut back to the city when I happened upon the scene. Those bandits didn't look very professional. I scared them witless in just a few moves. At the time, I just thought the young master in that carriage was excessively handsome, sickly looking, like a piece of porcelain that would shatter at a touch. So I asked a few extra questions. I smiled, but didn't tell him. Actually, that day, when he looked up at me, I had also quietly committed those clean yet stubborn eyes of his to memory. My married life with Chu Gianuan turned out even better than I had imagined. His temperament was gentle, yet not weak, and he was very opinionated. We had endless things to talk about, from poetry and literature to military tactics and strategies. He could always keep up with every topic I brought up. The Chu family was also easy to get along with. My father-in-law and mother-in-law were both open-minded and kind people. Knowing I grew up in a military camp and wasn't used to all those formalities and etiquette, they exempted me from the morning and evening greeting rituals. Chu Gianuan and I were in perfect harmony, our days sweet as honey. As for the Lu family, it had completely turned into a farce. The news of Lugji blocking the bridal sedan in the street spread throughout the capital's streets and alleys by the next day. His reputation was already damaged from the hunting ground incident, and now he had become the laughingstock of the entire capital. When the emperor heard about this, he flew into a rage. An imperial decree came down directly stripping him of his position and ordering him to reflect on his mistakes behind closed doors. My father added fuel to the fire, joining forces with several friendly censors to impeach the Lu family daily at court for failing to discipline their son and for his improper conduct. Lugji had completely become a pile of mud, drinking himself into a stupor at home every day, utterly lost and dispirited. Just then, Xue Rong jumped out again. Taking advantage of Lugji being dead drunk, she deliberately staged a scene of having her innocence tainted, crying and making a fuss in front of Madame Lu. Madame Lu despised her to the extreme, but since it concerned the Lu family's reputation, no matter how unwilling she was, she could only hold her nose and accept this daughter-in-law. It is just that this marriage was full of scheming and resentment from the very beginning. I heard from Chun'er that on the night of Lugji and Xue Rong's wedding, Lugji didn't even drink the nuptial wine before storming out and galloping away on horseback. As a result, whether from drinking too much or because the night road was too dark, he fell off his horse and broke one of his legs clean through. The doctor said the tendons and bones were damaged, and even if he could walk again in the future, he'd be a cripple. Madame Lu fainted on the spot. After she woke up, she vented all her resentment on Xue Rong, cursing her as a jinx, saying she was the one who brought disaster upon the Lu household. From then on, the Lu residents never knew peace again. Madame Lu tried every way to torment Xue Rong, but Xue Rong was no pushover either, fighting back against Madame Lu with everything she had, and that once high-spirited great general Lugji could now only lie in bed like a cripple. Listening to his wife and the mother he respected most attacking each other over trivial matters day after day without end. Hearing all this news, I felt not a ripple of emotion, only thinking they deserved it. You reap what you sow. This was the path they chose for themselves. Several years passed in the blink of an eye. Chu Gianuan and I remained deeply in love, though he had been frail since childhood and his health was never that great. So I simply resigned from the nominal position I held in the capital and took him traveling everywhere, visiting famous scenery and seeking renowned physicians. Over these years of traveling north and south, his health had gradually improved somewhat. Though it couldn't be completely cured, at least his complexion was much rosier than before. Another New Year's Eve had come. We didn't return to the capital, but spent the new year in a small town in Jiangnan. After nightfall, fireworks were set off throughout the city. Brilliant bursts of fire exploded across the pitch-black night sky, dazzling with flowing colors, illuminating the entire small town as bright as day. Chu Gianuan and I stood side by side under the inn's corridor, both draped in thick cloaks. He pressed a freshly warmed hand stove into my hands, then tightened the ties of my cloak for me. I tilted my head up to watch the sky full of fireworks, feeling the warmth from my palms, thinking that this must be what peaceful, contented days feel like. Yuan. He suddenly spoke from beside me, his voice somewhat muffled amidst the noisy fireworks. I turned to look at him. The glow of the fireworks flickered across his handsome profile, and those eyes that always carried a gentle smile were now filled with glittering light. He looked at me and said earnestly, "Meeting you is the greatest fortune of my life." Cold wind swept snow flurries through the corridor, yet I felt warmth blooming in my heart as if I was holding a little sun inside. I looked at him, looked at my reflection in his eyes, and smiled too. As do I.